Welcome to the latest of my deep dive videos. Today I'm going to explore Saturn going direct in the sign of Pisces on the 15th of November, but also the relationship Saturn forges to Jupiter, which reaches a square on the 24th of December, before Saturn makes its way into the sign of Aries, which is going to be on the 25th of May next year for 3 months and 7 days through to the 1st of September. What does that mean? We're going through a huge transition in so many different ways. Saturn can be about structures, it can be about time, karma, resistance, boundaries, lots of things. But also it's known as the Greater Malefic. Is that title justified? I'm going to unpack all of this for you. I'm going to share the event chart when Saturn goes direct. It does put Saturn in house 12. Really interesting. And even when Saturn makes its way into Aries next year, it's going to be in the 12th house too. Now, of course, Saturn is also going to be collaborating with Neptune. And that collaboration also links back to Pluto, and then from the 7th of July there's going to be the link to Uranus in Gemini. So we're going to have a golden triangle. What's that all about? So I'm going to go through all of this with you. I'm then going to give you a flavour of what you can expect with Saturn going direct in Pisces, but also what you can expect with Saturn going into Aries for each of the 12 signs from Aries through to Pisces. You can relate to that in terms of your ascendant, sun or the moon. Now, people have been asking me about what do I watch? Well, if you know your astrology well, you know your nativity well, it's undoubtedly the case. Depending on what house system you like to use, do work with the ascendant. If you're less sure, your interest or knowledge is emerging, you'll never go wrong with the sun. It's the core of your being. And if you want to know what the emotional dimension is, well, of course, that's the moon. I'm astrologer Patrick Arundell. Thank you for joining me. About 50% of people who watch my videos regularly are not subscribers. If that's you, please help the channel to thrive. Click that sub button and also the bell notification symbol. We know that sometimes you still don't get the alert, but it certainly can help some of the way. If you're a returning visitor, thank you so much for all your views. Now, I'm a consultant astrologer. That's the main part of my job. If you'd like to have a one-to-one with me, please check out my testimonials below. You can see what other people have shared working with me. I don't edit these, I share them as is. Now, if you'd like to take advantage of my year 2025 personal horoscope forecast, it's a great package, great value. I'll also give you your free love, Indian, Chinese and general zodiac forecast for next year, absolutely free of charge as a gift. But you also get 30% off and your life roadmap report. All this information will give you searing insights to guide your moves in the next 12 months. Please see below for more. If you're a patron, you can download a factoid on Saturn. You can become a patron from $3 a month. And also, if you'd like to buy me a coffee, please see below where you can make a donation through PayPal. So Saturn began its retrograde on June the 29th, and at that point it was 19 degrees and 25 minutes. So it's inverted back through to 12 degrees and 41. Now that's a total of 20 weeks, you know, which is a long time, 38% of the year, and that happens every single year. The next retrograde is going to be on the 13th of July next year, when at that point Saturn will have got to just under 2 degrees in the sign of Aries. Now, because Saturn is going to be making such a big shift from 12 degrees 41 all the way to nearly 2 degrees in Aries, anyone with planets or influences in their nativity from 10 degrees in terms of the mutable signs, so just to share with you those, that's Gemini, that's Virgo, Sagittarius and Pisces, or the cardinal signs, so that's Aries, Cancer, Libra and Capricorn, anyone from 10 degrees mutable through to 5 degrees cardinal is going to feel this transition through the celestial gearbox in a very powerful way. So how have you been finding things since Saturn went retrograde at the end of June? Of course, it does depend exactly where your personal planets are, but Saturn in Pisces is a little bit of an unlikely match. Saturn can be about those boundaries, of course, can be about authority, can be about experience and wisdom, but it of course is very much about those boundaries. And the sign of Pisces is almost limitless. It's very much about affinity. It just flows on. So the two don't really work that well together. But let's think about the big cycles of time which Saturn rules. Its Greek god was Chronos, chronology. And essentially, when Saturn moves back into Aries at the start of 2026, we're starting about a 29-year journey of a new beginning, a new epoch. We get the first taste of that. Saturn always does this. We have these three big shifts, each transition through each sign. So we get the taster experience through those first 3 months and 7 days, through to the end of August, the 1st of September, but then it is going to invert in the retrograde back into Pisces for the final time. So if you think about it, the sign of Pisces, the 12th zodiac sign, is the sign of emotional and spiritual culmination. The sign of Capricorn is very much about physical, practical and tangible material culmination. So here we have an opportunity to reflect back on those previous around about 28.5 years. What has it meant for you? It could be that you were born 28.5 years ago and therefore you're going through your Saturn return. Whether that's the case, or you have planets in Pisces which Saturn has been applying to, Saturn can create a sense of limitation, frustration. It's not known as the greater malefic for nothing, of course, but it can see us gain things. We can have wins with Saturn, and I don't feel that that's the popular profile of Saturn. Basically, I think a lot of people see Saturn and Jupiter as completely binary. Everything with Jupiter is amazing, everything with Saturn's awful. It's just not the case. And working with my clients, you often see when Saturn goes over a cusp, that's the time they will have a breakthrough. It can lead to a breakdown when Saturn goes over a cusp. Of course, it depends on each situation and each chart, but we must try to understand that Saturn can bring benefits. So what Saturn's asking us to do in the sign of Pisces is to work harder on understanding our responsibilities, the lessons we need to learn. It is, if you like, a need for greater reality. It can be about purification, as you can imagine, in the sign of Pisces, washing things away. But Pisces energy can also be where we choose to escape. And that can be where addictions are primed up. Whether it's my late night addiction to ice cream, or your addiction to shopping online, or whatever it might be, that can be that need for a little bit of escapism. And because of Jupiter being the traditional ruler of the sign of Pisces, that amplifies that sense of infinity that we do have with Neptune's co-rulership. So we have a chance here really to work harder at our psychological health, the things that we're not really wanting to look at, because the 12th zodiac sign can be to do with psychology, it can be to do with avoidance, can be to do with our sixth sense and our psychic instincts, but it can also be the things that we find quite difficult, which is fears, anxieties, where we can get depressed. So what we get with the timeless, limitless, boundaryless Pisces is a pushback from Saturn. So that can be a good thing, but it also means that since the end of June, if there are planets that Saturn's been applying to in the retrograde, things may have been really slowing down, and particularly in the house that it occupies for you. For example, if you have Saturn in house 2, your everyday finances may have felt very challenging. You may have also found it difficult to value yourself or to see the worth of your role in situations. If you have Saturn in house 9, you may have been working very hard at some studies or qualifications, or going through some kind of legal process, a contractual dispute, and it may have felt like very heavy weather indeed. Perhaps, for example, some kind of divorce situation. But then again, Saturn, remember, can bring us benefits. So through the retrograde, if we've chosen to, we may have made some changes where we've made our life more simplified our existence. Through that simplification, we can get greater productivity and efficiency. Very, very Saturn energies, because through its rulership of Capricorn, particularly, it is about working very hard to get some kind of outcome. Doesn't mean to say it's going to be handed to us on a celestial plate. So what about that square to Jupiter? Well, Jupiter and Saturn align in a conjunction around about every 20 years. And if you recall, on the 19th of August, Saturn and Jupiter became exact in their square, which is a 90-degree angle. If Jupiter's about growth and Saturn's about resistance, obviously that can create a lot of tension, disappointment, and also because Jupiter is detrimented in the sign of Gemini, anything to do with being boastful, investing energy in particular philosophies which may not necessarily be factually based, may be more to do with dogma, and then the clash with Saturn means that there is going to be consequences for that. Now that square between them is going to be repeated on December the 24th. But the interesting thing is the square is going to come back next year on June the 15th. But neither of them will be in the same sign, because on June the 9th next year, yes, Jupiter will move into Cancer, where actually Jupiter's a lot happier because it's exalted there. But by then, Saturn will be, of course, in Aries. We're also going to have a clash, I'm just going to tell you about this, on June the 21st, 2025, when we have the summer solstice, or the winter solstice if you're in the south. But in terms of the astrology, it's the summer solstice, the Cancer solstice, and that's going to clash with Saturn. But what about Saturn moving into Aries? Well, before Saturn moves, of course, Neptune glides into the sign of Aries at the end of March. But Neptune's going to be there for a much longer period, for just under 8 months. But the key with Neptune moving into Aries, I feel, actually offers a lot of possibilities, because its journey takes 164 years. So when it returns to the sign of Aries at the start of 2026, that really is the new epoch. And of course, in the middle of July 2026, the nodal axis is going to reverse North Node, the point of destiny, into Aquarius. We're also going to have Uranus moving full time into the sign of Gemini towards the end of April, and they're going to link back to Pluto early in Aquarius. So the start of 2026 is when we're going to see the really big shift. I think that what 2025 gives us is the first taster pack of what we can expect. But if we think about it, because Saturn rules time, and Aries, the first zodiac sign, is about the start of the process of the Zodiac, the procession of the animals. So once Saturn moves across that vernal point and moves into Aries, in a way it's counterproductive because of Saturn's more conservative, more resistant energies. And also, in a technical sense, Saturn is in its fall in Aries. It's not its best location, because Aries is about endeavour, it's about risk, it's about getting on the front foot, it's fire, and it is about being much more risk-taking and enterprising and more cavalier and buccaneering in our approach. Just about everything Saturn isn't. So Neptune moving there, and the combination of Saturn and Neptune, means that we need to use our imagination, the spiritual dimension of Neptune, in a way to start this new fantastic journey that we're all going to be encountering and starting out on, that we get the first starter of next year. Well, in some ways, we are going to see the wateriness of Neptune diminuate the fire of Aries. So it's not necessarily going to be a total bag of roses. But once Uranus moves for those 4 initial months into Gemini on the 7th of July, it forges a wonderful link back to both Saturn and Neptune, and also to Pluto. And that's the golden triangle, which is very mysterious. It is an opportunity for sure. In fact, on the 7th of August, around about the 9th exact, we have Mars going into Libra. Again, not its best location, it's in its detriment, but it does link back to Uranus and Pluto, and we have a grand air trine. So lots of opportunities for new exciting energy coming through for sure. However, the big picture for all of us is that I think this new beginning that we're dipping our toes into could feel a little bit uncertain. And one of the things with astrology is we must be realistic. You know, the world that we're living in is really very, very complex. It's never been more complex. So the pointers that we get and how this is going to unfold are really not entirely clear. But Neptune, of course, does represent spirituality. It can be very much to do with traditional religions. It can be very idealistic. Very empathetic energy, Neptune, if it's well positioned in a natal chart. Can be, of course, about dreams, illusion, fantasy, magic, psychic ability. All the things that we think very strongly are about Pisces, very Neptunian. But it is subtle, it's very ethereal, it's strange, deceptive. So what are we going to have with Saturn applying to that? The part of life that I feel has really got a little bit out of shape since 2012 has been the use of, let's say, escapist substances. And it, of course, depends on your particular philosophies and your particular viewpoint. You may think that some of those are completely organic and it's something that gives you some relief from the shocking, harsh reality of life. I totally get it. But also, it's to do with the proportion, so the excess. So I think one of the things we could see with Saturn and Neptune combining next year, particularly with the new administration in America being very keen to look at drugs, the use of drugs and the way that drugs are flooding into the country, you may see some new initiatives to use the power and authority of Saturn to crack down on the use of drugs. But of course, drugs, it's not just those that are sold on the street, it's also prescribed drugs, or drugs that people get from doctors or from companies that maybe import them, and it's all a little bit hard to manage and to license and to supervise. I think we are going to see a lot more of a lockdown on the way that drugs may be manufactured, for example, synthetic drugs in China, and it's a way of perverting Western society by pumping them in to our cities, and that is having a very bad social impact. And that's the way that Saturn could, in some ways, be a very positive thing as long as the remedies are proportionate and work. You know, just locking people up because they've got a drug addiction is not necessarily a very good thing. What we need to do is think about why people might take drugs. For example, if you're freezing cold and you've got nowhere to stay, you might take drugs to escape the harsh reality of that winter's night. So it's a complex thing, but we probably are going to see some law enforcement increases around the distribution, if not the end user. But of course, we'll have to see how the culture of the new administration in the US works. There have been some places around the world where they've tried to have a more liberal approach. It's worked really well. Tried it elsewhere, it's been a disaster. So we will see, because you could argue in a way that Neptune is more of a socialist energy and Saturn is much more of that traditional, old-fashioned, conservative energy. So watch that. I think that's going to be very important too. Now, I will do further videos on the relationship between Pluto, Saturn, Neptune and Uranus, but I did want to focus mainly on Saturn in this one. But I think Saturn and Neptune getting together is really interesting in the first zodiac sign, because remember, Aries is not where we get the payout. It's not where we get the outcome. It's where we're starting the process, and we get the true understanding of what happened in 29.5 years time when Saturn comes to the end of its journey and is back in the latter parts of Pisces again. So that's what I really wanted to achieve this video, is to outline the big picture. Saturn 29.5 years, Neptune 164 years, but it's going to be in its 163rd year in 2025. So it's really the start of 2026 when we're going to see the big shift, because by then Pluto will be much more rooted in the sign of Aquarius. So I'm going to go through the natal chart for Saturn going direct. If you have found it a bit of a punishing time, I can completely relate to that. And then I'm going to share the event chart of when Saturn moves into Aries, still in house 12. That's really intriguing. It's almost like it can't shrug off that Piscean influence. So on the screen now we have the first, Saturn direct, 15th of November, 2:21 p.m. Universal. I use Universal and Greenwich not because I live in the UK, it's because of the prime meridian. Now, if you watch videos by other astrologers who use natal charts based on a particular location outside of Greenwich, well, obviously that works for them. But for me, this works for us all because it's at the centre of where time really was monitored from to begin with. So you can see that Saturn, when it goes direct, is in the 12th house, and Neptune obviously is there just in the latter degrees of the sign of Pisces. And the interesting thing about this chart, I don't know if you can see it straight away, but the position of the ascendant is at 59 minutes. The 4th house cusp is 22 minutes. The descendant, 59 minutes in Libra, and the 10th house is at 22 minutes in Capricorn. Isn't that bizarre? So when this event happens, we have a mirror of all the cardinal points, the earth points, the cadent parts of the zodiac are all virtually on 0 degrees. So if Saturn rules time, what a really strange synchronicity that is. And what does it tell us? Well, yeah, it's going direct, but it's clashing with Mercury. Mercury detrimented up there in the sign of Sagittarius. Now, so Mercury and Sagittarius can make claims, can be super enthusiastic, very optimistic, but claims that don't always stack up. So almost immediately what Saturn's going to teach us, it doesn't matter who's got power on Earth, it's what the planets have that we really need to be mindful of. So what we're going to learn through to when Saturn moves into Aries is that loads of stuff is going to come out about things that maybe have been used to steer public opinion using nefarious methods. It doesn't matter what side of any political debate you're on. Some of you may assume that you know my politics. You might be quite surprised at my politics. My politics are actually very much to do with good manners. You know, we could have a much more civil society, depending, irrelevant of whether you're more conservative or more liberal in your viewpoint. But what that particular aspect does point to is the potential for some people maybe a depression of spirit because they don't feel that their voices are heard. It could be that there's going to be outcomes and implications for the things that have been claimed. But we've also got a bit of a broader square with Jupiter, which, as I mentioned, will become exact on the 24th of December. So that's going to be a point when the energies of Jupiter are really contained by Saturn. So once more, because Jupiter and Mercury are in an opposition, Saturn's essentially in a T-square to them. So there's going to be consequences for whatever people have said or done, whatever things have been pulled, the levers of power that have been used to steer debates or steer information. And it's going on all the time. You know, people sometimes criticize me and say I have a rather naive worldview. Maybe I do, but we're all being assaulted by a barrage of information, so it's very difficult to have the time to pick through it all. And of course we will also have that issue that we all are culpable of, which is confirmation bias. We want to read the things that generally fit in with our worldview. So Saturn is basically saying that this post-truth age that we've very much are in is going to have consequences. And how that plays out, I don't know. Maybe there's going to be more control over some of the people who share information. So that could be the media. The media's having a really difficult time of it, to be honest, because of the power of certain digital players. And it's important. I know people would say that the media are not necessarily blameless when it comes to sharing things that aren't true. Of course, I totally get they have agendas. But it's very difficult for them to reach end users because AI is now making an assessment of stories which are then being shared to people, so the newspapers don't even get the footfall. So how do you keep the newspapers going? So we could be in a period of the decline of any kind of comment beyond our own personal opinion that at the present time we're able to share through social media, but some of that social media may be going due to government regulation, particularly in America with TikTok. So Saturn is going to be very interesting through to the end of its time in the sign of Pisces in this phase. But what about the chart for when Saturn makes its way into Aries? Well, here the ascendant, as you can see on the screen, is just shy of 25 degrees in Taurus, which means Uranus is right on the first house cusp. As with any natal chart, the planet which applies most closely to an angle will be the most influential. So we're talking about a time of potential revolution, particularly with Mercury, you can see, so very, very close to Uranus. So the desire for people to be heard and to express their opinion is going to be very strong. You can see that Saturn and Neptune are conjunct, but as I mentioned before, in house 12. So the stuff we can't necessarily see is boiling away. And you can see the moon, although it's exalted in Taurus, it is in the 12th house. So this points towards, I feel, particularly with Chiron being in house 12, that some stuff could come into the open again. But do be mindful of that Uranus conjunct Mercury. We are talking revolution here. And, you know, it's not something that I would say lightly. The revolution might be in terms of technologies, health treatments, employment rights. It could be around, obviously, a greater increase of the amount of robotics and AI and so on. But there could be a real uprising, because that's a very unstable combination. You know, we're all going to be feeling a bit stressed out with that particular combination between Uranus, Mercury and the ascendant. Our frustration, if we feel penned into something, Taurus, that we don't seem to have much choices about, maybe it's the financial situation at that time, it's going to make us feel tremendously wound up, I feel. And if there is anything boiling away underneath the surface, it could explode out. Also, Saturn is squaring up with Jupiter. It's a bit broader, about 4 degrees, so that's a bit of a challenge. We also have Jupiter in a square with the North Node. The North Node, of course, the nodal axis, the the true node inverses into the sign of Pisces on the 11th of January 2025. So those are the things that you can see. We do have a very good link between Venus and Mars. Mars going through its second journey through the sign of Leo, and after obviously going into the retrograde 6th of December, leaves Leo, inverses back into Cancer 6th of January, returns to Leo 18th of April. So that's the second phase of Mars in Leo, the second 9-week slot. If you've yet to watch my Mars deep dive video, please see that below. If you've yet to watch my Pluto into Aquarius video, please click on the link within this video and you can go and watch that. So I feel that that's a really interesting set of influences, and Pluto up there in house 10 obviously does forge a pretty good link with Saturn and with Neptune, but we must remember that Pluto is about power. The sign of Aquarius can be about disassociation, it can be logical to such a degree it lacks the humanity that Aquarius is supposed to be about. But it can't be argued that the Sun does forge an amazing link with Pluto. Maybe we aren't all being pushed by Saturn's arrival into Aries to change. You know, it's an inevitable thing. If we keep lamenting how it used to be, it doesn't really get us anywhere. So that gives you a bit of a flavour, I hope, that the 12th house influence of Saturn when Saturn goes direct on the 15th of November and when Saturn moves into Aries tells us we're not going to shake off the potential for mourning that we can have through the way the world is, all the intrigues and the outright dishonesty that's just become almost manifest, and maybe the decline of spiritual values, of kindness, of caringness. All of those things are going to be potentially coming under quite a harsh environment with Saturn in Aries, because Saturn in Aries is not its favourite location. Stay with me as I go through each of the 12 zodiac signs from Aries through to Pisces. Please check out that offer for your year 2025 personal horoscope below. It really will give you so much information to chart your moves through the next year. I'll also give you the rest of this year free. I should have said that before. But please stay with me now as I go through those signs. So Aries, what a time it's been. It's been so complex because you've had the North Node with you. You had the solar eclipse supporting you. So that's really been asking you to work on your individual talents, invest in the things that gives you a sense of excitement and purpose and identity. But you've had Saturn and Neptune parked up in house 12. And so concurrent to those fresh starts or injecting vitality and energy into the things that are really appealing to you, there may have been something from your past, echoes that you've had to look at. Maybe something that you've been involved in work-wise, because obviously Saturn can be about work, is just coming to a natural conclusion, maybe because of changes to the industrial or technological landscape. Perhaps a job that you used to do just doesn't really exist anymore. Or maybe it's something that's been much more deeply rooted within you. Maybe you've been going through quite the life review, particularly since March 2023 when Saturn moved into Pisces, but even more intensely since the end of June. So the thought of Saturn and Neptune moving into your sign, forging those amazing links to Pluto and then ultimately to Uranus, could really give you a sense that next year can really be a time of a big step forwards. But do remember, with the North Node particularly moving into your 12th house to augment Saturn in January, that need to really tie up those loose ends is, I feel, going to continue until the start of 2026, because that's when Saturn moves into your sign for the long term. So as long as you understand where it's all at, you can work with what you're given much more effectively. So it's a bit of a two-pronged approach. Mars, your ruler, currently in the sign of Leo, your sister fire sign, certainly gives you the chance to show that cut and thrust for which you're so well known. But I do feel that if you're someone who has a disinclination to look at the feeling side of life, maybe you find emotion generally a bit of a subject you want to avoid. If you're someone who tends to be a little bit skeptical about people who share their life stories, who are vulnerable, maybe that's what Saturn's asking you to revisit, to think about that again. And then once Saturn moves into your sign for that initial visit on the 25th of May, you can see, being in the 12th house as it is, there's still a lot going on in the background. And with that ascendant, Uranus and Mercury all together in your second solar house, there could be some quick changes around your financial picture. But I must stress, there could be some opportunities. But it's all about making that transition from the things that you've been experiencing over a long period of time coming into the present, which really begins in earnest at the start of 26. If you're up for looking at the more emotional dimension of life, peering into your soul, clearing out and releasing things that no longer serve your purpose, cutting the cords from things that didn't work out, forgiving yourself and forgiving others for when life has got painful, and just freeing yourself up ready. So the big green light moment is going to be the start, is going to be January and February 2026. So as long as you understand the transition you're in, you can work with this energy all the more effectively. And I do feel, if you have felt psychologically a bit at a low point, your physical energy has been on the low side, you've had some mysterious illnesses or infections and not really been feeling great, that would all be understandable with Saturn retrograde in house 12. But it going forwards will certainly help, and the wheels of time are always ticking, and that's what astrology is all about. Your year 2025 personal horoscope forecast from me. Do remember, I will give you as a free gift your Indian, Chinese, love and general zodiac forecasts in booklet form that you can enjoy along with your personal forecast. And for 30% off, you also get your life roadmap report. Each chart totally unique to the person it's produced for. Please see below for more. So Taurus, Saturn has been going through your 11th house ever since March 2023. The 11th house is our highest hopes, it's our long-term future, it's our friendships, connections, it's our network, and all of those could have been bruised at times by the unrelenting energy of Saturn. But Saturn also may have made you much more conscious of where perhaps you've been a little bit too generous with your time, perhaps too favourable to the people who haven't quite deserved your affections. And so the lessons may have been quite profound, but of course with Jupiter for you in the second house, so when we have the square on the 24th of December, it's really asking to be very, very realistic about your long-term plan when it comes to finance. Because Jupiter in the second house, to be honest, despite the fact that Jupiter's detrimented in Gemini and it is in retrograde at the moment, can still have some benefits to it. It may have made it much more difficult to stick to any kind of diet plan. However, because you are someone with a real appreciation of a little bit of luxury or more aesthetic things like homegrown or organic vegetables, maybe what you're being asked to do here is just get a balance between your idealism and your everyday expenditure, just in very simple terms. But once Saturn goes direct, if you have had to rethink some of your plans for the future, the chances are there's going to be even more rethinking going on with Saturn moving through your 12th house, as it will do for 3 months and 7 days from the 25th of May. And that's going to shine an even more stark light on the people who are for you or who are not for you. But equally, you might start to change your loyalties. It could be that something that you've been very invested in, that been very inspired by will lose a little bit of its appeal, because ultimately Saturn in Aries, because of it being in its fall, and for you, this really could be quite a profound time of reflection. But you can see when Saturn does move into Aries, because the ascendant, Mercury and Uranus are all gathered together in your sign, you can still try new things. It's just being aware of what your deeper motivations are. And that might be another lesson that Saturn wants to teach you if you're not quite sure. Because this is how I see it. None of us has got it cracked. I spent a lot of time with my mum the last 10 years of her life, particularly the last 5. I saw her every couple of days for 5.5 years. And when she wanted to die, she told me she wanted to die. I was giving her ice lollies because that helped to make her mouth less dry and sore. And then when she died, she did go into, unfortunately, the doctor didn't get there quickly, so she went into rigor mortis, and because she had the damages, we had to put her in a larger body bag, and I helped put her in the body bag. I carried her to the hearse because that was my duty to support her during her final journey. But she would say right to the bitter end, nobody's got it cracked. Everybody can learn something all the time. And that humility is something that, you know, I feel very proud to have been guided by my mum's kindness and humility. So I'm sorry if that was a bit of a challenging story for some people, but it shows that everything does have an ending. As Sir Anthony Hopkins has so famously said, nobody gets out of here alive, you know. And so, with Saturn moving into your 12th house for those 3 months next year, it is important to face up to some parts of your life that aren't working, that do need to be released, that do need to be confronted, even if they are delicate and painful, because the more you posture yourself ready, you don't know exactly how you're going to react. Nobody can, but as long as you prepare yourself, there may be a job that you've worked in for a very long time that you've been very successful at is actually going to make way. It could be that it's your decision. It's nothing to do with the employer or the industry you work in. But the potential for endings is unfortunately quite strong for you over the next few years. But there's also the potential for new, wonderful understandings of what does serve your purpose once the North Node moves into the sign of Pisces on the 11th of January next year, because that's a much more spiritual prompt. Saturn obviously can be more resisting. The North Node will really help to guide you to make the right decisions of what you need to be more selective about in terms of your affections, your alliances, but also the conservation of your energy and being open to the whole process that is called life. Your year 2025 personal horoscope forecast from me. Do remember, I will give you as a free gift your Indian, Chinese, love and general zodiac forecasts in booklet form that you can enjoy along with your personal forecast, and for 30% off you'll also get your life roadmap report, each chart totally unique to the person it's produced for. Please see below for more. So Gemini, since the end of June, it may have felt that your worldly responsibilities have felt heavy, but also it has been an opportunity to sharpen up exactly what your ambitions and goals have really been about, because Saturn, of course, is at its best part of its journey for you in the sign of Pisces, not for Saturn itself, but in terms of the reflection of Capricorn, which is where Saturn is the sole domiciliary ruler. So if you really have made progress about reaching a higher and broader audience with your talents and your skills, and you've really put a lot of effort into it, dug deep, if things have been tricky and tough at times, as they can be with a Saturn retrograde, brilliant. Just be aware on Christmas Eve, however, that there is going to be that clash between Jupiter in your sign and Saturn in that 10th house position. Vital not to overpromise. Make sure that you're very realistic in what you're saying you can do and provide to people, and that will be something you can work through. If you're not quite sure of what you want in terms of your professional situation, or perhaps something you have been doing for a long time has just become too hard going, it's just become too draining, the physical resources that you've had to input in order to maintain the output, in order to get the job done, meet all your commitments and claim the salary or generate the income if you work for yourself, it could be that you've decided that you just don't want to really continue in what you were doing. And therefore for you, Saturn moving into your 11th house is really, really interesting, because of course the 11th house has an echo of the sign of Aquarius, and therefore Saturn being the co-regent of that sign means that I feel that you can gain more than most through Saturn and Neptune being in Aries. But it is going to help you to think more carefully about some of your ideals, some of your connections, your associations. And if you are at the moment, or it seemed at the moment, being involved in a bit more of a personal journey around raising your profile, achieving recognition, making sure that your income is stable. You've been working on property matters since Saturn moved into Pisces. Maybe it's been a renovation, maybe you've been considering what to do, you may not have made a final decision. But what all of that is asking you to grapple with is quite tangible, even though the sign of Pisces isn't. So if you are someone who's very imaginative, you're a healer, you're a psychic, it could have been a sign of success, but probably not without a certain amount of loading on you. So Saturn moving into Aries is going to be a time for you to rethink. And sometimes when I do say this a few times, so I apologise if you've heard this before, but very often when we're just close to the summit of something we set out on a long time before, just as we're about to stake our flag at the top of the peak, you know, we've probably already started to set new hopes for ourselves. And that's the crucial word, really, because the 11th house is more about hopes and aspirations. It's less about the tangible realm, which the 10th house is about. It's more about things that give us a greater sense of elevation in terms of our spirit. And of course, Saturn can resist elevation because it wants us to keep working and proving ourselves, and perhaps providing some kind of tangible evidence of who we are. And that's where your courage will come in, because Neptune and Saturn together could give you the opportunity to get the nice balance of doing something that is more meaningful for you, gives you that spiritual uplift, but also pays the bills. And you're really going to get the full understanding of that situation once you get around to the start of 2026. The only complication for you, really, although when Saturn moves into the sign of Aries, the Sun is in your sign and forging that amazing link to Pluto, you will have Uranus and your ruler Mercury and the ascendant locked away in your personal 12th house. So that still points towards that restlessness that Uranus has been creating since March 2019 full time, which has been quite difficult to deal with. So that energy is still going to be around. So the more you can look deep inside yourself to understand what really makes you tick, the more you can make those outer connections in a more successful way. Your year 2025 personal horoscope forecast from me. Do remember, I will give you as a free gift your Indian, Chinese, love and general zodiac forecasts in booklet form that you can enjoy along with your personal forecast. And for 30% off, you also get your life roadmap report. Each chart totally unique to the person it's produced for. Please see below for more. So Cancer, for you, since Saturn went into its retrograde, you may have had to work through some complex issues around some training, higher education, a contractual matter. Maybe it's your desire to spread your wings and travel that in some ways has met some kind of resistance. If you have felt penned in, the freedom loving part of your nature, because you are very often a person who's very nurturing and giving and helps other people to achieve their goals, but you are cardinal sign. There's a much more dynamic part of your nature that I feel doesn't really get reflected in popular culture. You are a leader, an executive sign. So Saturn being in house 9 may have seen you work even harder to give yourself more information and knowledge. You may have actually moved, and through that move it may not have necessarily all gone smoothly. And of course, because Jupiter, which is going to move into your sign excitingly on the 9th of June next year, is going to clash with Saturn and on the 24th of December, and therefore you have a 12th 9th house clash. That could see something pushed into the open that could be rather tricky for you, because if you are someone who's a little private, which is often the case with Cancerian people, if things don't quite go as you want, you can withdraw. You can put, you can close in. That legendary hard shell of yours is something quite tangible. You can be very giving, but then you can be very cool and cut the oxygen off if people don't meet your expectations. So Jupiter is a very spiritual planet. People think it's all about expansion and luck, but that's its Sagittarian, guys. Its energies of Pisces is much more about the psychological and healing plane. So being in the 12th house as it is for you at the moment, in retrograde, clashing with Saturn, if there is something that's perhaps around your emotional life that's not working so well, or there's some kind of hidden issue, it could come out just before Christmas in quite a tricky way. Then again, Saturn going direct can release the pressure that you've been feeling since the end of June and help you to get on the front foot, especially if you are developing new skills in some ways with an eye on changing your career. Because once Saturn moves for you into your 10th house, although the sign of Aries is about new beginnings, for you that could be a new beginning in terms of your work, because the 10th house energy is much more reflective of Saturn's rulership, its sole domiciliary rulership of the sign of Capricorn. So I think Jupiter moving into your sign, despite the fact it clashes with Saturn on the 15th of June next year, still gives you more opportunities than most, because Saturn loves house 10. So that's the picture for you at the moment. It may have felt that expanding your world has been difficult. There may have been situations that have made you feel a bit trapped, suffocated, limited. You haven't quite been able to get the traction going on things in the way you want. Things are going to ease now, but it's all taking you towards some kind of new beginning, or a moment when you're going to showcase your talents to a wider audience in quite a major way, which will show itself for 3 months and 7 days next year, but much more obviously it's going to show itself from the start of 2026. Your year 2025 personal horoscope forecast from me. Do remember, I will give you as a free gift your Indian, Chinese, love and general zodiac forecasts in booklet form that you can enjoy along with your personal forecast. And for 30% off, you also get your life roadmap report. Each chart totally unique to the person it's produced for. Please see below for more. So Leo, Saturn has been doing its retrograde through your 8th house. This is where we're most invested, devoted, can be where we most have to lose in some ways, but it can also be the area of life that is evolving in a way that something will conclude to be replaced by something new. So when Saturn moves into Aries for you, that 9th house energy could be scintillating, particularly as you will have Jupiter entering your sign in 2026 on the back of Uranus moving into Gemini. Tick, great for you. Saturn and also Neptune being in your 9th house from the start of 26. Tick. You're also going to have the North Node moving into your sector of relating from July 26th tick. So there's so much developing for you down the track. So you're going through a transitional phase. So for example, if you work with yourself, the 8th house can be about investment, long-term financial planning, can be about things like inheritances and bequeathments and legacies, and all of those may be in your personal mix. But most of all, Saturn of course can create resistance, and if you're in a relationship which isn't working very well, Pluto moving back into Aquarius on the 19th of November is going to make you much stronger about asserting your boundaries. If you've yet to watch my Pluto deep dive video of its time through Aquarius, please click on the link within this video so you can view it, because I think for you particularly, where you've shown so much sacrifice and assistance to others, it is your time really. So once Saturn moves into Aries, I really feel it is quite exciting. Doesn't mean to say it won't have challenges, but the retrograde for you has been quite complex. If shared or finances haven't been great, if you've got your own small businesses, which has really been bending under the degree of cost you've got, which is true for a lot of businesses, if it has become more difficult to get a credit line or to find new customers, or you're working in an environment where there seems to be ever more demands based on the financial reality that everyone is caught up in rather than your personal welfare, then that's all quite tricky. And also the other thing, Leos need to feel that you're at the heart of things. Now Mars is in your sign, going forward through to the 6th of December. That gives you the chance to shine. Once it returns to you on the 18th of April through to the 17th of June, another opportunity for you to set in motion something that's very dynamic and exciting. So if you're going through something that's ending, coming to a close, but it's all part of a bigger preparation for down the track, try to be philosophical about it. I'm not downplaying that could be quite tricky, but the upside of Saturn in that area is if you are coalescing with someone, collaborating with someone where their commitment matches yours, you could be forging such a tight alliance that really can be very, very positive indeed. Your year 2025 personal horoscope forecast from me. Do remember, I will give you as a free gift your Indian, Chinese, love and general zodiac forecasts in booklet form that you can enjoy along with your personal forecast. And for 30% off, you also get your life roadmap report. Each chart totally unique to the person it's produced for. Please see below for more. So Virgo, how have the relationships been? Because Saturn retrograde in the 7th house possibly hasn't made it the easiest of times, and possibly since March 2023. But I must qualify that. If you're in a relationship which you've been working hard on, you have shared objectives, you have a mutuality in your values, then Saturn in the 7th house may have concreted that connection together. So it just depends on your unique circumstances. But we all know that relationships aren't just of the romantic kind, can be with line managers, colleagues, neighbours, can be with siblings, other family members, our friends. And you may at times have felt a bit cooler towards other people with Saturn retrograde. And maybe other people have felt cooler, or it seemed that other people have been cooler towards you. So Saturn going direct is something to be pleased about. What about the square? Well, Jupiter and Saturn come into the square on the 24th of December, and that may mean in a professional relationship, however much you want to be optimistic about the prospects of that connection, it may seem in some ways not to really be working. Perhaps it is a job where you're not really feeling very comfortable. You don't feel that you can raise your profile because the expectations of the other person are too exacting, perhaps even it seems too crushing of your individuality. And of course Mars at the present time is also in your 12th house, potentially raking up some old debris, some old emotional issues that you may not have been completely aware of. So at times Mars in the 12th can make us very angry, at other times very tearful. So you're likely, even though Saturn goes direct, to continue to feel quite sensitive with Saturn in the 7th house. But it will make you less inclined to compromise around a bad relationship, and that can help you to set your boundary firmer. That's a good thing. It's also possible that with Saturn moving into your 8th house, the relationship that you're building now that seems to be taking some nice incremental baby steps could become something that's locked in a much more positive way. But equally, the 8th house can be, as you know, a time of profound endings. So it just depends. But I feel for you at the present time, because you're someone with a strong grasp on the detail of situations, you're being asked to just look beyond your immediate situation and try to understand more how other people might view you. And the more you can do that and understand what their needs are and what their situation is, that's where the hard work and industry of Saturn can come back to you right through to the 25th of May next year, and then from the 1st of September through to January 2026. Your year 2025 personal horoscope forecast from me. Do remember, I will give you as a free gift your Indian, Chinese, love and general zodiac forecasts in booklet form that you can enjoy along with your personal forecast, and for 30% off you also get your life roadmap report, each chart totally unique to the person it's produced for. Please see below for more. So Libra, what a time it's been. Getting Pluto back into Aquarius on the 19th of November will, as you know, be really lovely, but you have got Mars in a great location now. Excellent for linking to others. You can front up your needs in that situation. You can still stay you, but at the same time find ways to collaborate in that inimitable fashion that you have, to try to find those commonalities, those areas of interest, even if you're individually different. But since the end of June 2024, I do feel that life's everyday demands and responsibilities and obligations and chores and people's expectations and your desire to try to do the right thing have probably had quite an impact. So if you have felt quite weary physically, had some headaches, migraines, tensions, not really felt so well, then Saturn retrograde certainly won't have been helping that. Also, the Jupiter-Saturn square on the 24th of December is where that part of you that does want to be a giver and be very generous is confronted perhaps in a positive way by Saturn, which is saying, look, you need to be mindful of your needs, your welfare. And in a way, Saturn in the 6th house is about trying to moderate that sense of obligation that can be part of you. You are the ultimate people pleaser. You also have a strong understanding of fairness. And that fairness at times means that you might go the extra mile in the way that others won't, because you do want to do the right thing. But of course, life is complex. People's natal charts are complex. Not every Libra is going to be a wonderfully giving and caring person. And I feel that Saturn in its retrograde in the 6th house has made you perhaps more aware of the little niggles in life that don't really work for you. And your gift actually is stepping back, seeing the big picture, weighing things up. So Saturn going direct, good for that. But if at work there has been more demands, almost inevitably, the clients I deal with, it's all the big corporations you could think of in the world, they all say the same. Everyone wants more. So the 6th house is where we can be very dedicated, focused, methodical, trying to find points of improvement, but still when we do all of that, there's absolutely no recognition whatsoever, which can make us feel miserable, unseen, unheard. So Saturn going direct is a chance for you to think even more about your welfare, and whether that is some refinements to what you eat and drink. If you're like me with my Libra ascendant, and have that sweet tooth that I keep sharing with you. Oh, terrible, just terrible I am. And I didn't used to be like that. I wasn't into desserts hardly at all when I was younger. I was always much more of a savoury person. I'm obviously getting sweeter with age, but probably not so good for my blood sugar, certainly not so good for my teeth, and so it's in part an offset from the demands of doing all these videos, which, you know, is very, very hard work. And it does take a lot of planning, preparation, detailing, all those 6th house things. And Saturn is pushing you, it's exacting. And of course you can't please all of the people all of the time. I've just been looking at my presidential election video where I was completely fair and I lost 6 subs. Why was that? Because someone didn't hear exactly what they wanted to hear from me. I might have challenged or said a few things that didn't comply with their view of the situation. I'm not American. I don't have an inside understanding of it in the way many people would, but quite unforgiving for the amount of effort I put in to these videos, which are free. So, you know, everyone can get that more exacting expectation coming with Saturn in the 6th house. Also, the 6th house is a very practical, physical energy, but the host, Pisces, is much more about the emotional side of life. If we're not so much in touch with our feelings, it can still come out in low energy aches and pains. So that can ease. Important with that square, Christmas Eve, if you're going to be involved in providing services for loved ones, you know, do what you want to do or feel you should do, but don't do more than that, is basically what is being said. And then it's a big moment for you once Saturn moves into your 7th house, because although the North Node moving into the 6th house is going to continue that theme of trying to find the right job, the right structure, the right life organisation and diet for you that works, Saturn going into 7 is all about no. It's like saying, I'm not giving to this not so good relationship, whether it's with a sibling or a colleague or a neighbour. It's going to give you a firmness. But of course, Saturn is exalted in your sign, so being opposite you, it's not at its best, but it will help you to be firmer. It could also bring into your world, even if not immediately next year, but certainly from 26, a really significant person in terms of a relationship, a person that you would really be proud of. So keep working at it, keep working at trying to get the balance between the giving and the getting right. It's good to be conscientious, but not too much. You can't pour from an empty jug. Your year 2025 personal horoscope forecast from me. Do remember, I will give you as a free gift your Indian, Chinese, love and general zodiac forecasts in booklet form that you can enjoy along with your personal forecast, and for 30% off you also get your life roadmap report. Each chart totally unique to the person it's produced for. Please see below for more. So Scorpio, so it's said, if you have Saturn in the 5th house in the natal chart, and of course it would depend on what other players were in that 5th house, it could make someone a bit of a serious person when it comes to manifesting their talents, but it also could give them the industry to be very successful. There are no completely one-dimensional rules in astrology. It's all down to that nativity. And if you don't know your natal chart, please do check out that year 25 offer, because you will get it within the package. So Saturn in the 5th house in reverse means that maybe you haven't been as sociable since the end of June. Maybe there has been part of you that's want to spend time with the people that, you know, are a little bit more of your serious confidants. If you have children, maybe their exploits have been the centre of your attention. You've been working hard in supporting them developing their talents, which is lovely. But Saturn in the 5th house has got a reputation for being a bit potentially serious, and the retrograde could have meant that if something around your life, around a marriage, because for me this 5th house is about romance, some people would say it's the 7th house. To me, that's how we relate. The 5th house is more the joy part of it. Saturn and joy. Oh, have you ever heard that combination together? No, but there is a commonality in a way, because Saturn's in a water sign, which fits into your water triplicity. So if you're someone who's very talented, then this has been a time when, if you've really dug deep, you may have been able to dredge even more up from the depths of your being to showcase just what you're about. And one of the things I love about Scorpios is your tenaciousness. So even when it's tough, you can dig deep more than most people. But Saturn going direct can make things a bit more pleasurable. It's possible on Christmas Eve, if you are single, that you could encounter someone with Jupiter in 8 who really does make your pulse race. But there could be something about this situation you just need to be realistic about, but then you may decide to be utterly hedonistic and live in the moment. Why not? We only live once. And that's really the lesson of Saturn in the 5th house, isn't it? You know, joy is not something that necessarily gets served up to all of us in an equal and fair way. It does depend on what you're born into. If you're born into something that's a bit more stable and secure and nurturing and financially settled, there's a much greater chance that you're not going to run into some of the heavy water and heavy weather that some other people can. But then sometimes those kind of situations don't provide the spark and the will to really push to achieve that golden prize, because there isn't that innate drive, because it's all a bit more provided for. So, you know, again, we can always find scraps of possibility. So Saturn going forwards in 5th could see you meet someone, or if you have met someone, and working even harder to bring that relationship into being in a way which can be lasting, which Saturn can be about continuity. It definitely demands the industry, that's for sure. What about Saturn into 6 from 25 May next year? Well, Saturn in 6 is asking you to look at life structure. You more than any sign understands that life is about evolution. And if you're in a job at the moment where you can't demonstrate these skills and talents in the way you want or need to, Saturn moving into the 6th could see you leave that job, even if not next year, but from the start of 26, and do something fresh and different. How exciting would that be? And also, because Jupiter is going to be moving into your 9th house, that's about expansion. But if you can expand in a way which works practically, great. That will be tested on the 15th of June with the square between Saturn and Jupiter, Saturn, Aries, Jupiter, Cancer next year. So you are going through a period of your life where there is an opportunity to bring into reality talents, but it is going to require hard work. But then once Saturn moves into the 6th house, yes, you will need to be more disciplined about what you eat and drink, be a bit more aware of your fitness routine, perhaps not overdoing it at times. Do you ever get a little bit obsessive about things, Scorpio? Of course not. But if there is something that's really engaging you, then we can all do it a little bit too much. You know, whether it's watching too much football, or it's flicking through shopping channels, or, you know, we've all got those modes of escape. And the 6th house is asking us to find a better balance where what we are using our energy on has some kind of productive and tangible outcome. And Saturn's great for that. So a lot to go for you once Saturn moves into Aries, for sure. But you're setting in motion now your talents, or you need to. So if there is a talent you're not really bringing into reality, work very hard between now and the 25th of May next year, and then again from the 1st of September through to early January 26. Your year 2025 personal horoscope forecast from me. Do remember, I will give you as a free gift your Indian, Chinese, love and general zodiac forecasts in booklet form that you can enjoy along with your personal forecast. And for 30% off, you also get your life roadmap report. Each chart totally unique to the person it's produced for. Please see below for more. Sagittarius, honestly, I've really felt for you, because ever since Saturn moved March 23 into Pisces, that part of your nature that's expansive, pioneering, adventurous, open-minded, buccaneering in your approach, that really has been tied down, tethered down by Saturn asking you to look at more where you live, how you live there, who with, what your relationship is with yourself, your family. Are you in touch with your emotions in a happy and peaceful way? Do you live in an environment which pleases you? Because all of those things have probably been issues since then, and particularly since the end of June. So if you have had to move home, you've been making repairs, obviously Saturn can be about buildings. If there has been challenges in your family life with the immediate environment you're in, too noisy, too quiet, in a situation where there's not a lot of space, because space is very important to you, whether it's physically within the home or in the immediate environments. Have a lot of people been feeding in, needing your support? Older people, younger people, partner. The demands have been stacking up for a sign that does really value your freedom and independence. But just think back to March 2023 and ask yourself this question: what have you learned? Because Saturn is the planet of hard lessons for sure, but also because Uranus has been shaking things up in such a chaotic way at times for your life structures since March 2019 full time, 5 months into 18 from mid-May. And of course Pluto's been in house 2, how you view your worth, your value, how you earn money. All of those things have all been feeding into this overall situation. So Pluto moving into Aquarius is a great development. Saturn going direct, a great development. Just be aware, if you've yet to watch your Pluto deep dive into Aquarius video, you can click on this video and watch it. And so Saturn moving into Aries next year is really, even though Saturn in the 5th house has a reputation of not being great, just be aware for you, you have the fire triplicity to support you. So say for example you're a Scorpio, you have the water triplicity, so that offsets some of Saturn's restraint. You get the fire. What's fire about? Passion. And it's about initiation, and it's about going for it, which is what you're about. Also, because Uranus is going to move into your 7th house of relationships for 4 months next year, that's very exciting. And Pluto moving into the 3rd house is going to speed things up. So there's a lot of easing of energy. It's not going to be perfect. You still need to work on accepting feelings, because my proposition, having known a few Sagittarians in my time, and I also have some Sagittarius in my chart, is that Sagittarius people, because you're very plucky, if you have setbacks, it's, yeah, you're a bit fed up, dust yourself down, go again. You pile into the next exciting new development, but that doesn't always give you the opportunity to rinse through, reflect on and decompress from the experience. So what you're being asked to do with Saturn in Pisces is to become much more aware of the need to work at your feelings and not being hung up, not needing to inflate your view of a situation in order to protect yourself, because in a way that's protecting your vulnerability. The more you own your vulnerability, make sure you get the very nuclear core of your life working well. Saturn is about work. The more you're going to flourish as things start to evolve next year and into 2026. Because when Jupiter moves into Leo then, and also Uranus moves into Gemini full time, and the North Node moves into Aries, it is going to be halfway through 26 that your life is going to be revolutionized in a way that's really going to excite you. So you're doing a lot of prep, but the prep is really crucial. Your year 2025 personal horoscope forecast from me. Do remember, I will give you as a free gift your Indian, Chinese, love and general zodiac forecasts in booklet form that you can enjoy along with your personal forecast And for 30% off, you'll also get your life roadmap report. Each chart totally unique to the person it's produced for. Please see below for more. Capricorn, you have an appreciation of Saturn that nobody could possibly conceive, because it's all part of you. It's riven into your very being. I have a Venus-Mars midpoint in Capricorn, just for transparency. My Mercury's there, my Vedic Sun is Capricorn too. I've always been a bit of a worker, so I think you know that I'm very, or try to be, industrious. But Saturn is also about being very responsible and not necessarily getting caught up in the latest fad. It's that appreciation of continuity, of life experience, that things, you know, we have dramas, but there's always some news down the track beyond the drama. Life these days is all about the drama in the minute. Capricorns have the wisdom to know that in time things will evolve. But Saturn, since March 2023, has been asking you to think about some of your ideas, also some of your connections to neighbours, your immediate community, perhaps even to siblings. They're all classic third house energies. If you've worked very hard at understanding how to use technology better, you've gone on a course, you were someone who was very able, that you've elevated your understanding to an even greater extent, you're working with Saturn in Pisces really well. But of course Pisces is an emotional sign, it's water, so in a way what Saturn's been asking you to do is to link the emotion with how you express, because the third house, very Gemini essentially, but the steadiness of Saturn means that you're not always necessarily as flamboyant as some other signs, but that means you often take a bit of time to say what you think. But you may have found, even over the last few months, the last 20 weeks with Saturn retrograde, that even if you said things quite innocently at times, somebody seems to have got offended. Being offended has become one of the big trends of modern society, isn't it? Being offended. Someone sent me something on X today, formerly Twitter, obviously showing their delight that Trump had got in. But my view on Trump might not be what you think it is, because I don't say what my politics are. I do say what I feel about decency, honesty, things like that. But it's not based on any political persuasion. That's just part of what I feel the world needs. So, but someone obviously was trying to taunt me because they feel I said something somewhere along the line. And I'm just not going to react to it, because it's their stuff. They don't know what I really feel, because I do think it's not so relevant. It's the astrology I try to share. And I think that's all very Capricorn. I'm trying to be available, that other people are entitled to a different viewpoint, and sometimes I will get a little bit triggered, but it's really quite rare. What I don't like is rudeness. So if someone says something that's rude, then that's something that I don't like, because this takes a lot of effort, and you know, I don't get paid for people to watch content for free. It's only when people choose to work with me, have one of my products. So that's my choice. I'm not moaning about it, but let's just have a little bit of decent discourse. And so really and truly, for Capricornian people, you may have been surprised that at some point or another, somebody has found something you've said a bit offensive, or you have had some difficulties with your technology, or a long-standing device, whether it's a computer or digital or technical thing, or a domestic appliance, may have gone on the blink because of the retrograde. All possible. But that third house energy also means you're learning something, because that's the sign of quick learning. And quick learning is just as important as grand, higher learning, which is the ninth house. So I feel that Saturn going direct, you're obviously going to appreciate it like everybody, and it of course also depends on where it's been impacting on your nativity. But if there have been tensions or coolness with people immediately around you, hopefully that can thaw out a little bit. But what about when Saturn moves into your fourth house? Well, here that is more challenging, because if we think that's a Cancerian energy, Saturn is most certainly in its detriment in Cancer. It's also at the start of its journey, which Aries isn't Aries and Saturn are not mutually conducive. And also because Saturn is technically in its full there as well. So if you've got weaknesses around emotional relationships, deep in your life, a tricky dimension with a family member, or you live somewhere you don't really like it, or the neighbours aggravate you, or the house is too small, too big, all these kind of things, that's what you're going to be working on with Saturn in Aries. Your year 2025 personal horoscope forecast from me. Do remember, I will give you as a free gift your Indian, Chinese, love and general zodiac forecasts in booklet form that you can enjoy along with your personal forecast, and for 30% off you also get your life roadmap report. Each chart totally unique to the person it's produced for. Please see below for more. Aquarius, Saturn is your co-regent, your traditional ruler, and being in the sign of Pisces since March 2023, you may have found that everyday money has got more difficult to generate. Everybody's been experiencing higher costs, and that obviously creates a pinch point. The retrograde may have made you more conscious of those costs, but also it may have made you more conscious of where you don't feel that you're enough, because the second house is about our self-worth and values. So important, whilst Saturn is going through Pisces, to keep working on what makes you valuable, keep qualifying it. Because of the duality of your sign, you understand completely that you're not like the popular pop cultural idea of Aquarians, which is all about being zany, changeable, a bit wacky. Yeah, there can be some of that, but that has to coexist with that part of you that is deeply loyal, deeply associated with past connections, societies, groups, organisations, clubs, friends. That loyalty goes right down to your toenails. And so the progressive side of your nature has to live with the more traditional side. And because Uranus has been shaking up things in terms of your home and emotional life pretty well full time, particularly for those 5 months in 2018 when Mars was squaring Uranus in a really tricky way. That was the seeding energy that has affected us all since then. It's very, very turbulent and triggering. And then since March 2019, maybe do I live here? Do I switch? Do I get more space, less space? It's all been very, very turbulent and changeable. And that has all therefore fed into that financial issue, that self-worth issue, because the second house is about foundations. But Pisces doesn't really do foundations. It's more of the spiritual outcome of the previous 28, 29 and a half years. It's Saturn that wants the foundations. It's like trying to build a house on a bog. Get it? Because of the wobbliness, the mutability of the sign of Pisces. You can build the house, it might be great in an earthquake. It's not going to be very good when the tide comes in. And that's maybe how it's felt. A lot of change, and it's not necessarily been easy, particularly with Pluto in 12 since the 2nd of September this year, and of course up until the 21st of January in 24. But Pluto's birthday, 21st of January, how about that? So with Pluto going back into Aquarius, 19th of November, please check out my deep dive video by clicking on the link within this one. That is a new epoch, but I feel it is going to be the start of 26. And then when the nodal axis moves July 26, Uranus obviously moving full time into the sign of Gemini, delightful. Jupiter in your 7th house, whoa. Halfway through 26, it's going to be like a huge shift, a flurry of positivity coming in. But Saturn moving into 3 next year from 25 May certainly is pushing you to do what you do best, which is communicate with purpose. Because some signs can be very idealistic. People say Aquarians are idealistic. Aquarians are often very realistic. Now, I don't know if you're interested in English soccer, but there was a very, very famous manager called Bob Paisley who won a lot of trophies for Liverpool. A quiet, unassuming man who had some unusual ideas about how to prepare the players understanding sports science before it was even a thing, just instinctively, but also some very traditional methods of bonding people together so that they were a team. Hardly any players in that team, and they won so many competitions because of his brilliance. But you couldn't really say that Bob Paisley was like an outlier for progression and wacky techniques. So that's the beauty of Aquarius, the balance of progressive and traditional. It's a gift, and that gift is going to start to glow up for 3 months next year, but it really will start to glow up big time from the start of 2026. Your year 2025 personal horoscope forecast from me. Do remember, I will give you as a free gift your Indian, Chinese, love and general zodiac forecasts in booklet form that you can enjoy along with your personal forecast, and for 30% off you also get your life roadmap report. Each chart totally unique to the person it's produced for. Please see below for more. So Pisces, depending on where you have personal planets, the sun, the ascendant, moon, whatever, often Mercury can be very close to the sun in Pisces, and where Saturn has been, you may have felt that things were a little bit like a glass half empty, because Saturn does limit. I'm not disguising that fact. I'm just saying there's a wider way to look at Saturn. And Saturn's asking you in a way to discard the things that are not absolutely essential. Could be friends, could be interests, could be life habits. It could be some approaches to food and escapism, which, as I said previously in the introduction, very Piscean, but that also is where we're not really holding the reality. Saturn's great for reality, Pisces is great for escapism. So we know they don't quite work together, but Saturn's still in Pisces. What are you going to do about it? You've got to crack on and deal with it. Saturn retrograde, if it has been retrograde on your sun, you may have felt less physical vitality. There may have been times when you've even felt quite glum, all the way to quite deep glum, even clinical glum. And I'm not making light of that. But what really in the big cycle of time Saturn is saying to you is that this is your new beginning. And it's time to jettison the things that don't really work for you, that may have been a big part of your life over the last 29 years, because once you jettison the things and make yourself leaner and lighter, then you're ready to flex, which you've got a legendary ability to do, to get on the front foot. Now, we do have that square between Jupiter and Saturn, 24th of December this year. What's that about? Well, if you are meeting up with family members, there could be part of you that feels that you want to do your best for them, be very generous. There's another part of you that could be quite resistant. You could feel a bit conflicted, to be honest. Also, if you do have children, for example, the demands of them and juggling other things can seem quite a lot. But you still have a wonderful gift of just a bit like some water coming down the side of a hill. You're working your way around the obstacles. Saturn can be about obstacles because you can actually adapt. You're one of the most adaptable signs that there is. Sometimes you can have completely different postures and stances, which can frustrate people, therefore different moods, but you can flex. So whatever challenges you've been dealing with, know that you're putting in place a new basis. This is your first house. This is your Aries moment. Once Saturn moves into Aries, you'll get a taster of how much you've achieved. It might not be a significant amount next year for those 3 months, 7 days, but you'll really start to find out from the start of 2026. It's been a real pleasure being with you. Thank you so much for joining me for this Saturn Deep Dive special, Saturn Direct, Saturn 2025. If you've yet to watch your year 2025 Zodiac forecast, please click on the link underneath this video when you can do so now. Take care, all the best, and goodbye.